The keys felt heavier than they should have, cold brass slabs on a dented carabiner edges, smoothed down by decades of hands long gone. I turned them over in my palm, watching my breath mist in the freezing Anchorage night. Across from me, Anchor Point Mall stood like the carcass of something once grand, its front entrance looming with shattered glass doors and frostbitten signage still advertising a Christmas sale from 6 years ago. Black Friday blowout. No one ever took the banner down. No one ever dared to. Elliot Graves, the old man in the rusting wheelchair beside me, hacked out a dry laugh as he handed me the clipboard. Just sign your name at the bottom. Doesn't need to be real. I sure as hell ain't checking. I took the clipboard, scribbled something vaguely legible, and handed it back. Good, he muttered. $12 an hour flat. No questions, no clock in. Just stay inside until sunrise, keep the doors locked, and try not to listen too hard. Listen to what? He didn't answer, just rolled backward, his wheelchair creaking before stopping himself with one burned hand. His face, if you could still call it that, was a waxy map of scar tissue twisted beyond repair. The fire had spared him his life, but not his features. You lock it behind you, he asked as I reached for the entrance. Not yet. No need to, he rasped. Ain't nothing out here once in. It's getting out, that's the problem. I froze with my hand on the door. Come again. He just smiled, or maybe grimaced. And one more thing, Mercer. He never asked how I got the name. Probably read it on my dog tags. Don't try to save them. They ain't people no more. I didn't answer, just pushed the door open. It resisted like a reluctant confession, groaning as it swung wide and released a breath of stagnant air. The stench of burnt plastic and old smoke hit me like a punch in the gut. I gagged, reflexively. No matter how long it had been, that smell never left this place. It soaked into the walls, into the floor, into the bones. I stepped inside. The mall was quiet but not silent. It had a hum, low, irregular, the kind of sound you'd blame on distant electrical failure or an old ventilation system. But this was different. This buzz had a rhythm, a pulse, like static caught between frequencies, like something alive trying to talk without a voice. I stood still in the dark for a moment, letting my eyes adjust. My reflection wavered in the cracked glass of the entryway. I looked, worse than I remembered. Gaunt face, salt and pepper beard, the hollow eyes of a man who hadn't slept through a night in years. This wasn't supposed to be a life. Just 12 hours of warm air and shelter for $50. Just another job on the endless march between cheap motels and halfway houses. I told myself that 100 times before I'd taken the keys from Graves. Told myself it didn't matter what happened inside so long as I walked out at dawn. I moved forward, boots crunching against broken tile and old debris. The flashlight from my duffel bag flickered weakly. Fluorescence overhead sputtered now and then, enough to paint twisted shadows on the walls. Most of the storefronts had their windows shattered or boarded up. Mannequins lay face down like bodies after a storm. Piles of charred debris were scattered like driftwood in an empty sea. I followed the route Graves had drawn on the map. First stop the food court. It hadn't changed much from the photos I'd seen in news reports: frozen tables, overturned chairs, scorched signage. One banner still hung from the rafters, blackened at the edges, proudly declaring Black Friday doorbusters, one day only. It was obscene. Like the mall hadn't gotten the memo that everyone inside had burned or been trampled trying to get a flat screen. Something caught my eye beneath an overturned chair. I crouched down and reached for it, my knees cracking with the movement. It was a teddy bear, one arm missing, its fur matted and singed. I held it up to the light and caught a flicker in its one remaining glass eye. For a moment it looked almost aware. My fingers came away damp, not with water, not with anything I could name. It shimmered under the flickering light like oil or melted wax. I wiped my hand on my jacket and reached for the Zippo in my pocket. It was the only thing I still carried from before. Clara had given it to me before my second tour in Iraq. To Dan. Love, Clara. The engraving was half worn now. I thumbed it open. The lighter vibrated in my hand. At first I thought it was just my nerves, some phantom tremor from years of caffeine, nicotine, and adrenaline. But it wasn't me. It was vibrating like a cell phone catching a call, a low, steady rhythm. My dog tags pulsed against my chest in sync. I turned in a slow circle, scanning the dark around me. Then I heard it. Daddy. My throat closed. It wasn't just a sound, it was her voice, my daughter's. Emily, 6 years old forever, lost in a crash on a rain-slick road while I lay passed out on the couch drunk and dreaming of war. Daddy, she whispered again, softer this time, from somewhere deeper in the mall. No, I said aloud, barely breathing. No, you're not here. I clutched the teddy bear tighter, slid the Zippo back into my pocket, took a breath. Then I followed the sound. It led me down the west corridor, longer than it should have been, darker than the rest. Storefronts lined the path, but the displays were gutted mannequins, half-clothed, and arranged in poses too stiff, too calculated. One mannequin stood at the junction, missing an arm. Its other hand pointed directly toward a shuttered toy store. A crack ran from its temple, down through its chin. I stepped past it. The gate to the toy store was pulled halfway down. I ducked under. Inside shelves were bare old packaging littering the floor. 50% off signs mocked me from broken stands. Then something shifted behind a fallen display case. I stepped forward slowly, trying to steady my breath. She was fused with the cart, half human, half polymer. A teenager with skin melted into steel. Her arms ended in mannequin joints. Her face was wrong, but her eyes were alive. "You okay, kid?" I asked. The floor pulsed. The walls exhaled black. "I'm scared, Daddy," she said. But it wasn't her voice anymore. It was Emily's. I stumbled back, tripping over an aisle. The mannequin from the hallway now stood behind the security gate, pointing again, this time toward the escalators. I didn't think. I just moved. I didn't look back. Whatever was in that toy store, whatever had worn my daughter's voice like a mask, I couldn't face it again. My boots thudded against tile as I hurried through the hallway, the stuttering lights overhead casting wild, broken shadows that seemed to twist and dance at the edges of my vision. The mannequin was still pointing when I passed it again, its faceless head now tilted slightly to one side as if watching me flee. Its broken porcelain arm directed me toward the escalators, frozen in place, like an ancient machine with no destination. I reached the central atrium, breath misting in the cold air. From the second floor, I could see the skeleton of the mall spread out below me, boarded storefronts, overturned benches, kiosks full of nothing but dust and decay. A dry fountain sat at the center like a tomb filled with green-stained pennies that hadn't granted a wish in years. I paused at the base of the escalator, my hand gripping the metal rail. "Just keep moving," I muttered. Each step groaned under my weight as I climbed. The rubber treads were stripped away long ago, exposing jagged metal teeth. I tried not to look too hard at the mirrored surfaces lining the walls beside me. They seemed to shimmer not like glass, but like oil under heat. They didn't reflect me. They reflected something else. When I reached the top, the hum in the air changed. It grew louder, sharper, cutting through the quiet like a blade against bone. It wasn't the kind of sound you heard. It was something you felt pressing behind your arm and deep in your chest like panic or prayer. I stood still, trying to orient myself. The flashlight's beam trembled in my hand, illuminating only small patches of the floor ahead. Everything else remained shrouded in that terrible, almost sentient darkness. And then he spoke. First night's always the worst. I spun around, my heart jerking in my chest. Elliot Graves sat at the top of the escalator, his wheelchair barely visible in the flickering light. He didn't look surprised to see me. If anything, he looked tired. "You came up early," he said. "You followed me." He shook his head. "Didn't have to. You're seeing them already." Them, he wheeled himself closer, the right wheel squeaking with each rotation. "We call them drifters. What's left of the people who died here. Most folks don't notice them, don't feel the frequency. But the broken ones, we hear it clearest." "Broken ones," I echoed dryly. He nodded. "Veterans mostly, addicts, people with blood on their hands or guilt in their guts. You hear the hum, don't you?" I swallowed. "Yeah, it's them trying to be heard, trying to remember who they were, the mannequins. Just the best they can do. They don't remember what people are supposed to look like anymore." I thought of the girl in the cart, the way her arms ended in plastic joints, the terrible familiarity of her eyes. "Why can I hear my daughter's voice?" Elliot paused. "They pull from what's in your head. Use your memories to communicate. Your regrets, your losses, they become tools. They're manipulating me. They're reaching out," he said. "There's a difference." A flicker of motion behind him caught my eye. One of the mannequins at the far end of the balcony was standing straighter now, its head angled just enough to suggest attention. Its shadow stretched longer than it should have. "You need to finish your patrol," Elliot said, turning his chair. "First floor is mostly clear, but the cinema and department store, those are where the bleed is strongest." The bleed. "The place where reality's wearing thin," he said over his shoulder. "Where the fire ripped a hole through more than just drywall. Stay away from reflections if the walls start sweating, and don't answer any questions from shadows with too many teeth." I stood there as he wheeled himself away, his chair vanishing down a side hall like a ghost evaporating into smoke. I didn't want to move, but I couldn't just stand there either. I made my way along the upper floor, heading toward the old cinema. The humming grew worse with every step, like someone had turned the volume up on a broken radio. The air grew thicker, more oppressive. I passed storefronts sealed with plywood, some scrawled with messages in black marker. Souls, do not enter. Another simply read, they're still here. The cinema's entrance loomed ahead, twin doors left ajar. A musty scent rolled out from within old popcorn and damp upholstery. Something primal inside me wanted to turn around, to walk away, to find a closet and lock myself in until morning. Instead, I pushed the door open and stepped inside. Darkness swallowed me whole, unlike the flickering lights in the rest of the mall. Here there was nothing, no ambient glow, no safety in dull illumination. Just pitch black emptiness, broken only by the faintest red glow of exit signs that barely touched the floor. The hum turned into a roar the moment I crossed the threshold. I pulled out the lighter. The Zippo sparked to life, its tiny flame cutting a circle into the black. It should have reached further than it did, but the darkness here wasn't passive. It pushed back. It resisted the light. The seats in the theater looked like corpses torn open and bleeding yellow stuffing. Popcorn kernels glistened wetly across the aisle as if just spilled. The air buzzed with movement, though I couldn't see a soul. Then the projector beam snapped on. No warning, no sound. Just a solid line of cold light stretching from the booth to the center screen, except there was no screen. Just a blank wall. Still images played, flashes, glimpses, scenes I knew. Emily's 6th birthday, Claire in the kitchen, me behind the camera smiling, drunk maybe, but trying. The images flickered, then sped up. Now fire. Screams, people pounding on locked exit doors, smoke curling through the rafters. And then a new image, a woman maybe 20 crushed against a storefront, eyes wide with terror, clutching a shopping bag to her chest. The mall. This mall. 6 years ago. Black Friday. The camera zoomed in on her face just as the flames caught the ceiling tiles above her. I staggered back, heart pounding. The dog tags around my neck vibrated violently. "Show yourself," I yelled. "You want to talk, then show me." And then the seats were filled. Every single chair was occupied. Mannequins, all of them. Some missing limbs, some cracked or melted. All seated with perfect posture, their blank heads turned toward the screen. All but one, front row center. This one stood up slowly. It wore desert camo marine utilities just like I had in Fallujah. Its face was split, half plastic, featureless. Half human young with a scar over one brow. Dog tags hung from its neck. My dog tags. It raised its right hand in a perfect military salute. "Good to see you, sir," it said in Ramirez's voice. My lighter dropped from my hand, clattering on the sticky floor. The mannequin didn't flinch. "You're not him," I whispered. "No," it said, "but he's part of me, just like your pain is part of you." The projection flickered again, now showing me. Not the me I was now, the one before, the leader, the father, the man who hadn't yet broken under the weight of everything he'd failed to protect. "What do you want from me?" I asked. The mannequin stepped forward. "We want out, Sergeant. Same as you." The mannequin in marine camo stood just a few feet away, its plastic hand still raised in salute. Even half human, the posture was familiar, drilled into me through muscle memory and a lifetime ago. I stared at the dog tags hanging from its neck, catching the reflection of the red exit sign flickering behind me. My name was etched into the metal, my serial number, my blood type. Everything down to the scratches I remembered from when I hit the ground outside Ramadi. "You're not Ramirez," I said, my voice low. "No," it replied, the voice still carrying that eerie static undercurrent like a radio station just out of reach. "But I remember him. We all do. Everyone you lost. Everyone you couldn't save. The frequency remembers." The room trembled gently beneath my boots. The seats creaked as if the mannequins shifted, though none moved. The hum returned, no longer a whisper, but a steady, throbbing drone that vibrated against the base of my skull. "This isn't real," I said. "This is some kind of hallucination." The mannequin's half-human face almost smiled. "And yet your pulse is racing. Your hands are shaking. Your body knows what your mind denies. You're in the bleed, Sergeant Mercer, the place between." I took a step back, reaching down to retrieve the Zippo. The lighter flared to life immediately, no thumb on the wheel, and burned with a steady blue flame. It didn't cast light, not in the traditional sense, but it radiated heat, warm and comforting. Real. "You said you want out," I muttered, holding the flame between us like a ward. "Out of what? Out of here. Out of this. This place, the figure nodded. Out of the echo chamber. Out of the frequency. The mall is the vessel, but the signal is what binds us. It's fed by regret, shame, guilt. You've been hearing it your whole life, Dan. You just didn't know it had a source. Another tremor ran through the floor, stronger this time. The projector behind us sparked, and a new image filled the wall of family room. Clara on the couch, book in hand. Emily on the floor coloring. A dog I didn't recognize wagged its tail in the background. It was them. Older. Emily must have been 12. Clara had streaks of gray in her hair. They laughed. They smiled. They were alive. That world exists, the mannequin said. A reality untouched by your accident. A version of your life where you stayed sober. Where you picked up Emily from school that day. Where you were there, I couldn't look away. My hands shook and the lighter's flame quivered in my grip. I can go there. You could, the mannequin said, but nothing's free. That world already lost its version of you. Heart attack. 3 years ago. They've been mourning you just like you've mourned them. The lighter suddenly grew heavier. The teddy bear in my pocket felt like a sonne against my ribs. You're saying I could replace him with our help, the mannequin said. The frequency has built enough charge. 37 souls all focused on giving you a second chance. That's what we've been working toward. The mannequins in the seats behind it remained unmoving, but the air around them shimmered like heat on asphalt. A collective presence. What do you get out of it, I asked. If I cross over, the mannequin's voice softened. Peace, stillness, an end to the static. And if I say no, then the frequency collapses. We remain trapped. Our suffering continues. I turned away from the image on the wall, unable to take it anymore. It was too much, too perfect, where I asked. The mannequin tilted its head. The security office, the rift is there. Where the fire started, that's where you'll make your decision. The cinema fell silent. The projector stopped. The mannequins disappeared one by one, dissolving like smoke in a breeze. When the last one vanished, the lights returned, not fully, but enough to remind me that I was still standing in a theater in a burned-out mall at the edge of the world. I left the room without another word. The corridor had changed. The walls bled black oil, now slow rivulets of it trickling down like tears. The air was heavier, each breath carrying the coppery taste of blood and scorched wires. The tiles beneath my boots rippled faintly as if the mall itself was breathing through unseen lungs. I didn't look into the puddles. Graves' warning echoed in my head. If the walls start sweating, don't look at the reflections. I kept my eyes down, flashlight aimed at the carpet. As I reached the central courtyard again, the frequency peaked, no longer a hum, but a symphony of whispers, half-formed thoughts, and broken promises. It swirled above the fountain like a tornado of light and sound, warping the air around it. And the pennies, they were rising. All at once, dozens of tarnished copper discs floated into the air, spinning slowly. Then faster, faster until they blurred into a glowing bronze disc that reflected multiple scenes at once. The mall during the fire. People screaming, smoke pouring from vents, mannequins melting into pools of flesh and plastic, Graves in his uniform shouting into a radio, flames licking at his legs. And then, Afghanistan, my unit, my men, Ramirez, Chen, Martinez, the soccer ball, the child, the IED, the moment, the failure. I dropped to my knees. You couldn't have known, a voice said, carried on the wind of the frequency. He was a child. No, I whispered. I should have seen the signs. You would have died too. Maybe I was supposed to. The pennies dropped, falling like rain. The disc shattered. The hum fell back into a murmur, like a heartbeat settling after a panic attack. I sat there for a moment, palms flat against the cold tile, the bear still tucked in my coat pocket, the lighter burning softly in my hand. You're not beyond redemption, Daniel, a familiar voice said. I turned. Graves stood behind me, but he wasn't burned. He was whole, gray-haired, upright, dressed in the same security uniform I'd seen in the surveillance photos from 6 years ago. His eyes were clear. His voice didn't rasp. You're one of them, I said. I was, he replied, but I chose to stay grounded, to guide the next one. You, why me? He smiled, sad and gentle. Because you're still capable of making a choice. He led me down a hall I hadn't seen before, narrow and unlit. The walls buzzed with heat. The oil seeped thicker here. I followed him without question. You're close, Graves said. The department store's next, then the security office. That's where it ends or begins. We stopped in front of a set of doors, both cracked and charred. The handles melted. The mannequins will try to sway you, he warned. The drifters will show you everything you want. But you've already seen what matters. What do they need from me, I asked. Closure, he said. Forgiveness. Sacrifice, same as you. He turned, beginning to walk into the darkness beyond. Where are you going? I've played my part, he said over his shoulder. Now it's your turn. He faded like smoke, and I stood alone before the doors to the heart of the mall, to the rift, to the choice. I reached for the handle and stepped inside. The door opened slower than it should have, as if the mall itself were reluctant to let me in. The hinges groaned, resisting every inch of movement, until a final creak released the stench beyond mold rot, and something beneath it all, something sweet and decaying like fruit gone too far past ripe. The department store stretched out before me, long and wide, its aisles scattered with mannequins in mid-collapse, broken price tags and signage advertising sales that would never come again. 60% off everything. Final day. The irony wasn't lost on me. I swept my lighter in a slow arc. The Zippo's blue flame flickered, barely able to cut through the oily blackness. This darkness wasn't empty. It was full, heavy, resisting light like muscle does a scalpel. Shadows pooled at the edges of every display, clinging to shelves and dangling from fixtures like spiderwebs. I took a cautious step forward. The tile underfoot felt soft wrong. It gave slightly, like walking on a gym mat soaked with water. I remembered Elliot's warning. If the floor warps, close your eyes. Count aloud. 10 seconds. I stopped moving, shut my eyes tight. When I whispered, 2, 3. The humming returned louder now, the kind of vibration that crawled up through your spine and rattled your molars. The Zippo grew hotter in my hand, almost too hot to hold. 8, 9. The floor solidified with a jolt, like stepping off an escalator that didn't quite line up. My boots landed firm, cold, normal. I opened my eyes. The mirrors had begun to show things, not reflections, scenes. Each pane of glass scattered around the store displayed something different. A man at a gas station feeding stray dogs, a girl crying in a hospital hallway, a teacher scrawling equations on a chalkboard with shaking hands. In each image there was me, sometimes younger, sometimes older, always alone. In one mirror I was at Arlington Cemetery kneeling at a headstone. In another I sat on a porch somewhere warm holding a photo of Claire and Emily. A third showed me in a VA clinic trying not to cry as I described the nightmares to a counselor. None of it had happened, and all of it had. The mirrors weren't showing fantasies, they were showing possibilities. Lives that branched off from mine like tributaries of some massive broken river. The dog tags around my neck pulsed in time with the hum. I turned toward the center of the department store, drawn forward by a sound like a heartbeat made of static. That's when he appeared again. The marine drifter, half mannequin, half Ramirez. He stepped from the shadows more solid than ever. The plastic side of his face was cracking now, revealing patches of human skin beneath. He looked older, as if this was who Ramirez might have become had he lived. "It's time, Sergeant," he said. "For what?" "To see it. All of it." He raised a hand and the mirrors turned at once. They spun, repositioned, rearranged until they formed a dome above and around us. A 360-degree panorama of another world. My world, but not this one. I saw a clean living room, a couch, a fireplace. Photos of me with Clara and Emily on the mantel. The air smelled like cinnamon, like home. Emily was older now, maybe 12. She laughed at something Clara said, then hugged her around the waist. A dog barked in the background. I didn't recognize it. Probably one they adopted after I was gone. "That world is real," the drifter said. "It exists on a parallel frequency, one that diverged the day of the accident. You can cross to it." I stared at the scene until tears blurred the image. And just like that, I get them back. "Yes," he said, "but it's not just about you. Crossing will collapse the frequency. Every drop of energy we've gathered, every soul bound to this mall will be used to send you over. And the others," he hesitated, "they'll be anchored here, trapped, forever." I turned away from the mirrors, the Zippo still clenched in my fist. My knuckles were white. "Why would you do that for me?" "Because you hear us. Because you've suffered like we have. And because we want at least one of us to make it out, even if it costs 37 others their chance." The drifter lowered his gaze. "Some of us no longer believe we deserve a chance." The words hit harder than I expected. How many times had I told myself the same thing, that I didn't deserve peace, that the war, the bottle, the accident meant I was beyond redemption? My eyes drifted back to the mirror. Clara was baking something now. Emily was sneaking chocolate chips behind her back. They looked happy, safe. I want that, I whispered. God help me. I want it more than anything. You can have it. The mirrors parted, revealing the far wall of the store. The oil that bled through the cracks had coalesced into a single vertical tear, a rift pulsing with blue light. I could see movement beyond it. Furniture, family photos, laughter, home. I took a step forward, then another. The hum became deafening. The mirrors vibrated so violently they began to crack. Behind me, the mannequins collapsed like puppets, with their strings cut, as if even their forms could no longer contain the energy surging through them all. The bear in my pocket felt alive, its single eye pulsing with light. I reached the rift. Clara looked up from the couch. Her eyes locked on mine. She smiled. Emily turned, her eyes widened. Daddy tears streamed down my face. This was it. This was the choice. You know what happens if you go, the drifter said behind me. But you'll be with them. Forever. I raised my hand. Sometimes came another voice, faint and fragile, but unmistakable. Elliot. Sometimes, Sergeant, he whispered, the hardest choice isn't between right and wrong. It's between what you want and what they need. My hand stopped inches from the rift. I looked back. The mannequins had begun to shimmer. Each one flickered, no longer plastic but human, transparent, glowing, alive. I saw Ramirez whole again, the girl from the cart, an elderly man who'd once managed a bookstore. They watched me, waiting. Do it, I said. The drifter looked confused. Not step through, I said. Destroy the signal. Now, he shook his head. You'll lose your chance. I already had it, I said. They were mine, and I failed them. I don't get to have it again. I turned and ran. I sprinted through the department store, past the trembling mirrors, past the fallen mannequins, toward the old PA system mounted in the ceiling, one of the last pieces of tech still humming with power. I leapt onto a shelf, raised the Zippo, and smashed it into the speaker. A burst of sparks, then silence. Real silence. Not the hum, not the static, just quiet. The rift behind me flared one last time, then collapsed, folding in on itself like a dying star. I collapsed to the ground, chest heaving, and then light, soft, glowing. The drifters emerged from the shadows. Ramirez smiled. You freed us. One by one they dissolved into light, each whispering a single word as they passed thanks. The light lingered in the air like mist, soft golden, warm in a way I hadn't felt in years. I sat there on the cold tile floor of the department store, the burned-out shell of a mall all around me, watching 37 souls rise like fireflies into the rafters. They drifted upward without fear, without pain. Just peace. And I wept. I hadn't cried since the funeral. Not when the car was towed away from the pole it had wrapped around. Not when the caskets were lowered into the ground. Not when I found the dog's leash still clipped to the backseat, stained and torn. But here now I did. The drifters were gone. The frequency was silent. I was still here. The PA speaker lay in melted fragments at my feet, the Zippo beside it blackened and burned beyond use. The lighter Clara gave me, the one I'd carried through 2 tours and 6 years of guilt, it had done its job. Just not the one either of us expected. Still breathing came a rasp behind me. I turned. Elliot Graves stood in the doorway, framed by flickering fluorescent light. He looked older than before, somehow more human. The waxy scarring on his face had softened. His eyes, though clouded, held something new. Calm. Maybe even pride. You were watching. I always watch, he said. Wasn't sure which way you'd go. I pulled myself to my feet. My legs ached from kneeling, from running, from decades of regret made physical. I almost chose it, I said. I saw them. Clara, Emily. I almost. But you didn't, he cut in. That's what matters. My gaze drifted back to the collapsed rift. A black smear remained on the wall where it had been like a healed scar. Will it come back? Graves shook his head. No, it took years to gather enough power for that kind of tear. The drifters gave everything to hold it open for you. Now that it's gone, the mall can rest. Just like that. Just like that. We stood in silence for a while, listening to the nothing. The absence of the frequency was louder than I expected. It left a hole in the air where suffering used to be. Come on, Graves said, finally turning his chair. Let's get you out of here. Sunrise is close. I followed him down the corridor, retracing steps I didn't remember taking. The mannequins were still toppled where they'd fallen, but now they looked like what they were, plastic and hollow, nothing more. No whispers, no movement in the shadows. Just a dead mall and 2 men who had survived it. We passed the toy store again and I paused. The cart was empty now. No half-melted girl, No mannequin limbs, just a dusty aisle and a broken cash register. But on the floor near a pile of old signage sat the teddy bear, still missing an arm, still scorched around the edges. I picked it up gently. It felt lighter now, not just physically but spiritually, like it had let go of something too. Graves didn't comment, just waited as I slipped the bear into my coat pocket and continued walking. At the top of the escalators, I hesitated. The food court stretched out below us, quiet and still untouched by the chaos that had consumed the upper floors. I looked at Graves. What happens to this place now? Nothing in, he said. It fades. They'll probably bulldoze it one day. But it won't matter. The pain is gone. The voices are quiet. And you? He smiled sadly. I was bound here by the frequency. By them. Now I'm just a man again. A broken one maybe, but free. We reached the main entrance. The glass doors cracked and frostbitten glowed with a soft gray light. Dawn was breaking. Alaska, winter sun weak, distant, but beautiful all the same. I looked down at my hands. They were trembling. Not from fear, from relief. I opened the door. The cold morning air bit my face sharp and clean and real. Outside, the parking lot stretched empty frost crusted along the curbs. The city beyond had already begun to stir plow trucks scraping ice from roads, dogs barking in the distance, a jogger's breath puffing out as he passed. Life. Actual life. I turned to Graves. You coming? He shook his head. I've got some things to finish. But you? He pointed toward the horizon where a sliver of sun was peeking over the mountains. You've got a whole life waiting. I don't even know where to start. He grinned. That's the fun part. We said nothing more. I stepped into the parking lot, the weight of everything pressing down, but lighter now, manageable. Behind me, Anchor Point Mall stood quiet, the last echoes of its curse fading into the cold. I sat on a bench near the bus stop, the teddy bear resting on my knee. The tag on its foot, nearly illegible, read, "To Emily, love Daddy." I stared at it until the bus arrived. The driver, an older woman with a kind smile, gave me a nod as I stepped on board. Rough night, she asked. You have no idea, I said. She laughed lightly, not expecting an answer. You going far, I hope so, I replied, dropping a crumpled bill into the fare box. I sat near the back, the bear in my lap, the city slowly rolling past the window. We passed shuttered shops, open diners, street lamps blinking out as the sun climbed higher. As we crossed the bridge out of the industrial district, I saw a little girl on the sidewalk with her mother pointing up at the sky where birds cut against the pink and blue light. She smiled at me. Just for a second, a gap-toothed grin so familiar it made my heart stop. But it wasn't Emily. It couldn't be. And that was okay. I smiled back. For the first time in 6 years, I didn't feel like I was running from something or chasing ghosts. I was just moving forward. And for now, that was enough. The bus took me farther than I'd planned, north then west, the city unfolding like a slow breath. I wasn't sure where I was going, but after what I'd left behind, movement itself felt like salvation. Anchorage in the early morning was all muted colors and long shadows. Snow crunched under tires. Steam curled from sewer grates. Life quiet, stubborn, and unremarkably beautiful moved on. Eventually, I stepped off near a strip mall with a diner that still had a neon sign buzzing open in the window. I took a booth near the back, ordered coffee and eggs, and didn't say much else. The waitress brought my food without asking questions. She noticed the teddy bear, but didn't comment. Maybe she thought it belonged to a kid I dropped off earlier, or maybe she'd seen enough broken people over the years to know when not to pry. I watched the world go by through a fogged-up window, hands wrapped around a warm mug. It should have ended there, but it didn't, because when I blinked, the window changed. Not fog, not frost, just changed. The scene outside melted like watercolor left in the rain, and in its place was a living room I hadn't seen in years. Clara sat on the couch flipping through a photo album. Her hair was longer. There were faint creases around her mouth, laugh lines, the kind that only show up after years of smiling. Emily sat beside her. Older now, almost a teenager. Her hair was in a braid, her feet tucked up beneath her. She looked up suddenly like she'd heard something. Her eyes locked on mine through the window. Daddy? I blinked. The window returned to normal. Cars passed on the icy street. A man walked his dog. Across the booth, no one sat. No one else had seen what I had. But I wasn't hallucinating. Not this time. The rift was gone. I'd watched it collapse. I'd broken the frequency. The drifters had moved on. So why was I still seeing through the veil? Why was it still open, even just a crack? I left the diner in a daze, the coffee cooling in its mug, untouched. Outside, the sky had turned that sharp Alaskan blue, and the air carried a promise of snow. I walked without thinking, just moved. Past strip malls and parking lots. Past a VFW hall with a sagging American flag out front. Past a pawn shop where a young man stood arguing about a guitar. And then I saw it. A storefront. One I didn't recognize, even though I'd walked this stretch a dozen times before. There was no name above the door, no signage, just a glass display window filled with cracked mirrors arranged in a half circle, each reflecting a different angle of the street and none of them showing me. I opened the door. The bell didn't chime. Inside, the light was golden and dim. Dust hung in the air like smoke. The walls were lined with mirrors of every shape and size, some ornate, some simple, all slightly warped. They didn't reflect the room. They reflected other places. One showed a hospital hallway, another a snowy battlefield. A third revealed a man standing at a crossroads, literally a dirt road crossing another beneath a sky smeared with red clouds. In each, I recognized myself, but not as I was now. These were versions of me from other branches of time. In one, I still wore my uniform, a silver star pinned to my chest. In another, I was bearded and grizzled, holding a sign that said, "We'll work for food." In yet another, I stood with Clara and Emily on either side, a hand on each shoulder, smiling. I reached toward the mirror with the smiling family. My fingers touched the glass and it rippled soft and warm like dipping your hand into a sunlit lake. Behind me, the floor creaked. I turned. The mannequin was there again. One arm, cracked porcelain face, silent, watching. I stepped back from the mirror. "What is this?" I asked. It didn't answer, but its head tilted slightly toward another mirror. I turned. It was my apartment, the last one I'd lived in before I hit bottom. Empty beer cans, a kitchen full of unopened mail, a single mattress on the floor. The memory hit me like a slap. "Why are you showing me this?" Still no answer. Another mirror shifted. Now I saw the toy store again, the cart, the girl, her eyes reaching for me, with Sophie's voice. And another mirror. The fountain full of rising pennies, each one glowing with the light of the dead. And then one final mirror, the department store. The rift. The moment I turned away. The moment I chose them over myself. "What are you trying to say?" I demanded. The mannequin raised its arm, pointed to the ceiling. I looked up. A skylight impossibly high revealed a sky that wasn't Alaska. It was too dark, too full of stars. They moved too fast. A sky where time bent. And through that skylight I saw them. Clara and Emily, watching, waiting. "You can still go," said a voice behind me. I turned. Elliot Graves stood near the door, untouched by the dust, hands clasped before him like a preacher ready to deliver hard truth. "The rift closed," I said. "You said it was over." "I did." He nodded. "And I meant it. But something changed." "What you did?" I shook my head. "I made my choice." "Yes," he said gently. "And because you made the right one, you've been given another. One that isn't powered by suffering. One not paid for in souls. A true gift. Rare, but real." I turned back to the mirror where Clara and Emily waited. They weren't calling out this time. They were just there, smiling. At peace. "I don't understand," I said. Elliot came closer. "You broke the cycle, Dan. You didn't run from your pain. You faced it. You freed them. Now you can choose again. To go back," he shook his head. "Not back. Forward, to a version of life you never believed you deserved." I stood frozen. Everything inside me screamed to reach out, to step through, to be with them again. But another voice whispered, one I hadn't heard in years. "Earn it." I looked at Elliot. "If I go," I said, "what happens here?" "Nothing." He replied. "No souls left. No frequency. Just a space with memories in its bones. It'll fade, and if I stay," he smiled softly, "then maybe you help others find their way out of their own haunted places." I nodded, then stepped forward, hand outstretched. One more time. My hand hovered over the glass. It was warm now, not just in temperature, but in memory. It pulsed with something deeper, like a living heartbeat pressed against the barrier between two lives. Clara's eyes locked on mine from the other side. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her look said it all. "We're here. We're real. Come home." Behind me, Elliot stood silent, arms folded. The mannequin remained still at the edge of the mirror chamber, a silent witness to the unraveling of worlds. I pressed my fingers against the surface. It rippled, and this time it didn't stop. A sound low, vast, like tectonic plates shifting rumbled through the building. Mirrors cracked. Lights overhead burst one by one in a hail of sparks. The floor trembled. I turned just in time to see the ceiling of the chamber begin to split. The rift, the true rift, wasn't in the mirror. It was above us. It tore through the air like lightning, carving open the sky. a gash of blue-white light that shimmered with all the weight of memory and potential. Through it, I saw fragments of every life I might have lived, worlds stitched together like stained glass. Clara and I dancing in the kitchen, our bare feet on tile. Emily at her high school graduation calling out my name. A flag-draped coffin, my funeral. Me sober and scarred, handing out food at a veterans shelter. Me drunk and violent, smashing a TV alone in the dark. All of it, every path, every fork. And at the center of the rift, one world burned brightest, a quiet living room, a couch, a child's drawing on the fridge. Home, I can do it, I whispered. I can step through. Elliot's voice came low and sharp. Yes, but not alone. I turned to him, confused. What? The mannequin moved then, not jerky like before, but smooth, purposeful. It walked to the center of the room and stopped beneath the light of the rift. It lifted its remaining arm and began to peel. The porcelain cracked and crumbled, falling in chunks to the floor. Beneath it, not plastic, not steel, flesh, skin. A woman emerged, young, pale, eyes that shimmered with memory too heavy for one lifetime. Her hair was scorched at the edges, her face marred by burns, but there was beauty there, not just of features, but of being. She looked at me. I was the first, she said, the first to die here. The spark that started it. I lit the match. What do you mean it was never an accident, she said softly. The fire, it was rage, desperation. I was trapped, alone, forgotten. I wanted to make them see me. She looked up at the rift, eyes glistening. I thought if I could burn it down, they'd remember me. But all I did was trap myself, and everyone else. The room shook again. The air thickened. The mirrors shattered one after another until the only reflection left was the one in the rift itself. You started the bleed, I said, realization cutting through me like glass. She nodded. And I've been keeping it open. Waiting for someone strong enough to decide, you want me to finish what you started? No, she said. I want you to end what I can't. She stepped aside. And that's when I saw it. The rift was widening, not just over the room, but through me. My dog tags rose off my chest, floating in the magnetic pull of the decision. You step through, she said, and you get everything you want, your family, your redemption, peace. I stared at her. And if I don't, you seal the rift, she said, with yourself. Someone has to stay on the fault line, someone alive, to keep it from tearing again. Elliot wheeled forward, face tight. She's right. I stayed as long as I could, but I'm part of the bleed now. I can't hold it anymore. It has to be you. I couldn't speak. The light from the rift wrapped around me, now tendrils curling over my skin, showing me what could be. Emily at 16 learning to drive. Clara resting her head on my shoulder as we watched the 4th of July fireworks from our porch. A future stolen, now offered again. But behind that beauty was a cost. The woman, whatever was left of her, took my hand. Hers was cold and steady. Anchoring the bleed means you stay. But it also means everyone else gets to live in peace. No more whispers, no more drifters, no more bleeding between worlds. No more second chances, I said. She nodded. I've lived with guilt for 6 years, I whispered. I thought I needed punishment. Then I thought I needed redemption. Maybe I was wrong on both. The light pulsed harder. It wanted me. I looked up into the rift, and Clara looked down. She saw me, smiled, then mouthed something. Thank you. The tears came again, hot and silent. I'm sorry, I whispered. I love you. And then I turned, faced the ground, dropped to my knees, and placed both palms against the floor. The dog tags around my neck lit up like fire. The air roared. A scream echoed from the rift, not pain, but release, and then silence. The light folded inward, collapsing in on itself like lungs exhaling for the last time. The rift closed, the room went dark. I opened my eyes. The chamber was gone. The mannequins, the mirrors, the ghost light, all gone. I sat in a bare room now lit only by a single flickering bulb in the ceiling. Dust on the floor, a cracked chair in the corner. No portals, no reflections, no choices left. I was alone and at peace. I didn't know how long I lay there. Time didn't move the way it should in places like this. There were no clocks, no windows, no sun to chase the dark away. Just breath, heartbeat, memory, and silence. Real silence. The kind that presses on your chest not with weight, but with absence. When I opened my eyes again, the flickering bulb overhead had gone still, casting steady yellow light across cracked tiles and peeling paint. The chamber, the mirrors, the rift, the mannequin woman was gone. As if the mall had swallowed the dream and digested it whole. But I was still here, still alive, still me. I rolled to my knees groaning as pain surged up through my legs into my spine. The kind of pain that reminded you were still breathing, still accountable. My dog tags lay beside me, glowing faintly with residual warmth. I picked them up, slid them back over my neck. The teddy bear was still in my coat. One glass eye, one missing arm, and now, lighter, like its burden had finally lifted. I stood. The mall was quiet now, but not dead. Not cursed, just tired. Worn out like an old soldier at the end of a long war. And it was empty. No mannequins, no shadows, no whispers in the vents. I made my way through the halls, retracing steps carved into the very walls by memory. The toy store was just a toy store now. Broken shelves, faded price tags, silence. The cinema doors were wide open, the screen dark, the seats empty. When I reached the food court, the sun had begun to rise. Light trickled in through shattered skylights, above painting golden bars across the tile like the first rays of forgiveness. The air smelled like old dust and fresh possibility. And then I saw him. Elliot Graves stood at the main entrance, one hand resting lightly on the broken door frame. He wasn't in his wheelchair. He wasn't burned. He wore the same uniform I'd seen in the old security footage, the one taken just hours before the fire. His face was whole, tired but whole. Mourning, he said, his voice no longer ragged, no longer bound to the rasp of pain. "Did it work?" I asked, throat dry. He nodded. "You sealed it." I stepped closer, but I thought, someone had to stay. "Anchor the bleed." "You did," he said, "but not forever." I frowned. "I don't understand." "The rift closed because you chose the others over yourself, because you earned your way out." He looked at me, eyes bright with something like pride. "That was the final act. The mall no longer needs an anchor. It needs a witness." I didn't know what to say. He continued, "You gave 37 people peace. You gave her peace. You gave yourself the right to try again." I looked past him through the doors. Outside, the parking lot shimmered with a layer of frost. Snow dusted the hoods of abandoned cars. The sky was blue clear, clean alive. "I thought I was going to die in here," I said. "You did," he replied. "Not your body, but the part that hated itself. The part that kept the hum alive. That part's gone now." He stepped aside, motioning to the doors. "You're free to go, Sergeant Mercer." I hesitated. I turned once more to look at the mall. Anchor Point stood like a cathedral of the forgotten, damaged, yes, but no longer bleeding. The walls no longer pulsed with grief. The mannequins had vanished. The frequency was gone. I took one last walk through the main corridor, past the silent escalators, the cracked fountain, the place where the rift had once torn open the sky. I placed the teddy bear gently on the dry lip of the fountain, facing the morning light. "You don't have to carry it anymore," I whispered. "None of us do." Then I walked out. The cold hit me like a baptism. Fresh, clean, real. I took a deep breath, and for the first time in years, it didn't feel like I was inhaling smoke or static. It was air. Just air. Outside, the world had already moved on. A street sweeper passed in the distance. A man scraped ice from his windshield. Somewhere a dog barked. A woman in a parka jogged by with her headphones in, oblivious to the place behind me where nightmares had once nested. I sat on a concrete bench near the edge of the lot, watching the sunrise. My fingers were numb, my joints ached. But I was alive. Whole, no. Not yet. But healing. The teddy bear sat behind me now, a memorial maybe, or a marker. For the fen for Mumpress. A car pulled into the lot. An old Ford sedan, faded paint, cracked windshield. The kind of vehicle you drive when life hasn't been easy, but you're still showing up anyway. The driver stepped out, a young woman in a hoodie looking tired but focused. She looked at me, blinked. "You okay, sir?" I nodded. "Just waiting on the light." She tilted her head. "Sunlight," I said. Hadn't seen it properly in a while. She smiled faintly. "Yeah, it's been a long winter." She climbed back into the car and drove off. I watched her go, then stood. The sun hit me full in the face, warm despite the snow. Behind me, the mall stood quiet. Not haunted, not cursed, just done. I turned away from it, dog tags clinking softly as I walked, boots crunching through frost. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I was ready to get there, and that was enough.